Okay, now look, that's not too exciting, but the reason I took that picture, it's going to turn into something really exciting. We were just coming home from our artists, and I stopped at the corner. Well, my wife stopped. I wasn't driving. I'd be in trouble. There's a camera at this place here. And I had my iPhone out, and I thought, oh, there's the sun behind some bushfire smoke. And I don't know about you, but I'm old enough to remember when we had smoked glass slides to look at the sun through, and you actually could see an awful lot of detail. So I just snapped the picture, and then the light went green. So my wife began to move off, and that's when the results become interesting. But first of all, a couple of close-ups. Can you spot anything interesting yet? No, you can't turn right. Yes, you can go straight ahead, and yes, you can go round to the left-hand corner, which we were doing. Can you spot anything interesting on the sun? Well, we'll come back to these because as we turned around the corner, a second later, I took that picture because the sun became clearer. Now, what can you see? Because I didn't see it when it happened. Something's shooting through the picture. Another sun has appeared in the middle right-hand side of the power lines. Oh, and there's something interesting way up the top. Okay, let's keep going. It's interesting. Look at that. Oh, the sun's interesting, and you can see a lot of details, but look at the smoke from the bushfire. There's a trail through it. And look at the object in the bottom left-hand side. So what have I seen? No, I didn't see that while it was happening. I only saw it just as the camera shutter began to shut, and I saw that bottom thing whiz through. Wow, interesting. What did I see from the falling from the sky? Number one, well, that's the sun. That's obvious. It's got an interesting smoke aura around it, and it's got a trail of smoke coming down the right-hand side. Number three and number four. Well, number three is obviously the thing that interested me, but number four is actually a second trail. And you'll notice one other thing. See number 5 and 6? Number 5 is actually what looks like another sun, but it's not. Number 5 turns out to be sort of like almost like a little shock wave. Something's happened at those spots. I've been in touch with the university and quite a lot of people around the planet. Number 6 is definitely an explosion of some sort. You can't quite see it, but there's another trail coming off to the right there. And number 7 is the object. Okay, there's the sun back close up. See what I meant about using a smoked glass? Can you see what looks like something projecting from it? Take you down a bit there. Now, this is the old way we used to say, oh, look, there's a flare coming off the sun. Now, I sent this to the university, and we're currently trying to work out, have we just seen a falling star, a meteorite, or is this space junk? Now, what's interesting, the one thing we know it isn't is going to keep us occupied for a while. Oh, you see, keep looking for the fact that Jesus said in Matthew 24 that after all these days of tribulation, he's been talking about all sorts of persecution, the trouble that's coming, the Romans invading Israel, etc. And then he says, after these times, the stars will begin to fall. Well, it looks like we've seen a bit of space junk that nobody else except us saw, and we weren't even looking for it. We actually were just photographing the sun, and we have got what appears to be interesting flares. Well, we began to look, has anybody else seen this? Diane, you were one of the people who tried to check up, because I asked the university, I've asked quite a few people, did anybody else see this? What have you found out?
Well, I just looked on the mainstream news media sites for using keywords like meteorite, southeast Queensland, and things like that, and I couldn't find anything. And normally things like, if some solid object had actually fallen onto the ground, someone surely would have reported it, because this is not a place that's sort of way out in the out in the outback or something. It is a built-up area. So if something had fallen onto the ground, someone would have noticed it.
Yeah, so we had a bushfire going on. We had lots of attention to the bushfire. It's not far out of town. I'm in the Redlands where I took that picture. Joe, you did some looking. What did you find?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Basically nothing. No report, no nothing. So there are people who are professional meteorite hunters, right?
Yes.
And there are people who have ways of finding out reports of objects falling from the sky and going and looking, right? And some of these people are tied up with the military, and the military is monitoring everything. And so you can go and find meteorites, and 9 times out of 10 people don't mind if it's, a genuine piece of space rock. But the two real interesting things for me is, number one, there's no report of this anywhere. And, as you say, sometimes it'll be, oh, look what was spotted, flying over Brisbane tonight. No report of that anywhere from what I could find. But what really intrigued me, and I know it intrigued you as well, John, is that trail of smoke.
Yeah,
because that's
did.
not indicative of a space rock in the slightest.
No, you see what that implies. If you've got two trails and they both are smoking, one going what looks like through the bushfire smoke, then that may be understandable. But there's one way above the smoke cloud, which would imply it's burning. It's not burning like a meteorite does with a fancy flash ahead. I've seen quite a lot of meteorites fall with a sort of flaring head, but no smoke trail. But this one's got a smoke trail. It would imply there's carbon there, some sort of oil or carbon material that's been used to construct it, which would imply satellite, which would imply a satellite fell to the ground in almost a predictable track, but nobody was aware of it. The pilots flying through Brisbane would have hated to have one of those come through their cockpit or through the wing. So they always keep track of where the space junk actually is to try and predict this. So perhaps we could be really conspiratorial and say the Russians shot down one of our weather satellites. We could make all sorts of fancy things up. But the one thing we can be dogmatic about, and we'll come back to that when I get some more replies from around the university, the one thing we know about, it's not the stars referred to in Matthew chapter 24 as really announcing the end of all things. And you make sure you keep looking for that, because when that happens, you need to know Christ as your Lord and Savior.